So Sharon, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, in the very, very, very beginning of my life, I said I wanted to discover the cure for cancer. And and then from there, that kind of mutated into I wanted to be a neuroscientist. And then from a neuroscientist, and when I started college, I started dancing. And once I was dancing, I was like, I can't be a doctor, I have to dance. And it's funny because it so perfectly led me into the Alexander Technique, where I feel it's a perfect combination of movement and dance and the brain and neuroscience and how those two come together.
So when in your life did you become interested in the Alexander Technique, and how did you become interested?
I was about 25, and I had excruciating hip pain. And it was the kind of pain where I was doubled over, and I would have to leave work and go home and lie down. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I had thought something was seriously wrong with me. And another dancer had suggested that I tried the Alexander Technique. And when I went to the very first lesson, I didn't have any pain in my body. And that was like the most refreshing experience I'd ever had in so many years that really like planted a seed. This is something special. I really need to share this.
And did you keep taking lessons, and then how did you decide to train to be a teacher?
I continued to take lessons, and in about 2 months after taking lessons with the teacher down in San Diego, I had a really stressful job at the time, and I was working with children with autism. And after about 2 months of Alexander lessons, I just felt this ability to deal with the stress in a much more effective way. So by the end of the day, after working with 3 to 4 children with autism, I wasn't completely drained and miserable, but actually had energy at the end of the day, and I knew it was directly related to my work in the Alexander Technique. And I would say around that time, I was trying to figure out if I was going to get a master's degree to continue working with children with autism, or was I going to become an Alexander Technique teacher? And I mean, it was like my insides were saying Alexander Technique. It was such a gut decision, and everything just kind of fell into place. I moved back to LA and joined the training, and it changed my life.
How did studying Alexander Technique affect you?
It's like that's such a big question. One major way that Alexander Technique changed my life and really helped me is that I could recognize how I was responding to stressful situations and how I was responding to those situations that weren't serving me, like clenching my jaw, holding my breath, tightening my chest when something was upsetting. And then Alexander Technique gave me the skills to recognize that and then to release the muscular tension of stress. So I learned how to release my neck. I learned how to release my chest and rib cage. So rather than being in a physically tight response to a distressing situation, I could be open and flexible, and I could think more clearly. So that would be the number one way that it helped me. But it also allowed me just to physically move into my full height or my full width. I actually have a scoliosis, and most people are shocked when they find out that I have a scoliosis. When they look at me, it doesn't look like I have. Everyone says, oh, you have such great posture. And that scoliosis created a lot of back pain and shoulder pain and hip pain, which was originally brought me to the work. So being able to release the physical tension of that scoliosis so I have a more upright, more dynamic use of my body eliminated pain. Without pain, I was much happier.
How did your study of the Alexander Technique affect the way you related with other people?
Oh, that is such a good question. When I'm working with other people, talking to other people, I have the ability to stay with myself and really keep myself open and dynamic and responsive so I can see and hear and understand other people. Rather than getting caught up in my own fears and worries and stresses about life and about human relationships, I can really stay with myself and stay open because I'm directing my body to be up and open and responsive to the person I'm listening to. And when I'm up and open and responsive to them, I can stop judgment, I can stop fear, I can stop anger, and then I have a better understanding of where the other person's coming from, and I can relate in a more joyful way to them.
What sort of feedback did you get from other people as you started studying the technique?
Most people are like, what's that? Most people don't know what the Alexander Technique is, or the other response is they try and stand up straight by lifting their head and they pull their shoulders back like, oh yeah, Alexander Technique, that's that posture therapy. And now, I just laugh at that. I'm like, well, good posture is a, byproduct of this work. It's not the main focus of this work. So those are the two main responses I get. But now, as I'm teaching more and meeting more people and getting really comfortable about talking about the technique, most people are like, wow, I could really use that. I would say our world, and what I mean by our world is in LA, because that's where I spend most of my time, people are not taking care of themselves. And I don't mean they're not getting massages and they're not exercising. I mean they're not caring about the body they live in when they're in the car, when they're at the computer, when they're watching TV. Those things, the car, the computer, the TV, are more important than their body. And they're miserable and tired and frustrated. So now when I talk about the technique, people have a sense of relief and openness and curiosity about it.
I've been struck by the Alexander people I know that none of them seem to go for massages. They all would rather go for an Alexander Technique lesson.
Well, I can't say I'm a part of that crew. I like both. I love getting Alexander Technique lessons. There's always this moment when I'm in an Alexander lesson where, I know nothing. Our teachers can constantly reveal to us this little secret area that we're holding and gripping and tightening that we didn't know that we were holding, gripping, and tightening. And at the same time, for me, I love massages. They feel great. But I know they're not the solution.
Yeah. Was there anything you found difficult or frustrating about the 3-year training program to become an Alexander teacher?
I never wanted to not finish. I was driven to go through it. Probably the most difficult aspect of going through the training is just shedding old painful habits. And I wanted to shed them. So I was completely willing to walk through the fire to shed those habits. But there were definitely moments of strong emotion and moments of wanting to not see my own patterns. But then, my own desire to learn this work and to share this work overcame that sort of I don't want to see it, I don't want to deal with this. And I just remember the other really annoying element of the work is if you're freeing up all the time, eventually it's like this old self comes in and says, get away from me, I don't want to free up, I want to be tight, and I want to be closed off, and I want to be angry. I don't know what.